Hello, and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program in which we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Today we're going to be speaking about the country of Uganda, a landlocked nation in Africa, home to approximately 35 million people. The country is very diverse, over 30 ethnic groups with a variety of languages, cultural practices, and historic forms of governance. Around 3/4 of Uganda's population is below the age of 30, and there are high levels of poverty and unemployment. Uganda is also a religiously diverse nation with over 84% of the population Christian and about 14% Muslim. Christians are divided nearly 50-50 between Protestants and Catholics. To tell us more about the life and the work of the Catholic Church in Uganda, it is my pleasure to welcome Father Simon Jude Kanyike from Kampala, Uganda. Father Simon, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
It's a pleasure.
Father, you were one of 9 children growing up. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of what was life like for you growing up in the central part of Uganda, in your village?
Thank you, Mark. It's very important to understand that growing up in the central part of Uganda also situated me at the center of conflict during the time in which I was born.
In what conflict?
As history has it, during the 1970s, Uganda was led by Idi Amin, considered a dictator by history, definitely. And many things did not go right according to what you read in history. Maybe I was too young to follow what was going on. But in essence, you would recognize that it was difficult to have the simple basic things needed for a home. Salt, sugar, clean water to use. It was very difficult. But there we were, 9 children in our home, and I was born the third and only boy to my parents. I did not immediately recognize it because we grew up in an extended family, wherein I think my parents took trouble to bring my cousins that would be my playmates as a boy. So I probably don't develop a girlish
Yes.
character. But that's what it was like, and always being faced with the reality of suffering on one side, and then the possibility of going home and considering yourself lucky, 1, to grow up with your parents, and 2, that they can struggle to provide something little to keep us going.
What inspiration would you say your parents were for you because you must have seen the sacrifices that they made for you? How did this mark you? How did this form you?
I remember going to a little nursery school, for example, and seeing my mother as one of the teachers in this kindergarten. My father was working for a steel mills corporation, and they would come home at the end of the day. At one moment, they would sit us together and ask us what we would like for a meal. That was amazing. When you are young, you think that what happens in your home is what happens elsewhere. And if we asked for something a little bit too costly, they would also take trouble to explain to us why we cannot have it. And like this, we understood that even though mommy and daddy have a job, they cannot buy the whole world for us. They cannot. The real struggles began when my father was laid off from work, and he sat around for a while, and my mother's job wasn't paying as much, and we started going to school with huge explanations. why you haven't paid your school fees, with promises and not to the head teacher. So for me, that was really touching to realize that this is what it has come to. But over and above everything, letting us at home lead the evening prayers together, especially. We used to kneel together, pray together. They would keep quiet and let you, as a little child, pronounce your intention, an intention maybe for a home. And I think this way they were able to be aware of what our deepest sentiments as their children were, even at the moment of prayer.
This poverty also marked you in your vocation, that is, in the sense of your desire to serve the poor. Can you tell us a little bit about how this poverty also translated into your vocation?
Okay, at around the age of primary 3, 4, I had this great urge to be one of the altar servers in our parish. I had done the first catechism for children, and I was lucky to be allowed to learn how to be an altar server. At that moment, I began feeling a real attraction of being the priest that calls everybody to prayer. But also, I must admit that there are many priests who would come and visit at home. So the image of a priest as a guest in my home was not strange. And bit by bit, I gathered the courage to tell them there is a particular priest that I had to tell, I want to be like you. I didn't know even how to say the word priest, but I said I want to be like you.
How old were you then?
I was about 8 years. And he was excited. He asked my parents if it was okay, and they said, well, he has always mumbled about this issue of becoming a priest, but we think he's too young to understand what it entails. And when the priest asked what they thought about it, they also said maybe it is better at a later stage. And this priest, in my presence and their presence, said, sometimes this voice comes only once. If he can give it a try, let it be. And they accepted. So he made an arrangement for me to do an interview at the preparatory seminary, and thank God I passed. I was the happiest person. Yes.
You were the happiest person.
That's how my journey starts. But now, looking at the school where I was...
But before we go back to this, what was the reaction of your sisters when you said at such a young age, I want to be a priest?
I bet they also did not know what it meant. So they, apart from saying, we'll miss you at home, you're going to be in a boarding school, their reactions appeared much later in life, wondering if I really become a priest, are they not going to have any nieces and nephews to call them aunties? To understand also that in the African tradition, the importance of a family is very high. So as I grew up, I could see that maybe it had a psychological impact on both of my parents.
It was a sacrifice also, as the only son.
Exactly. But at the same time, I said, if God wants it this way, let it be. At one time, my own mother told me, we have seen many other sons who opt otherwise, and they don't bring so much joy to their parents, if this is what God wants. But don't be there. They always told me this. Do not go to the seminary. Do not stay in the seminary if you think it's what makes us happy. Be there if it makes you as an individual happy.
Did you ever doubt?
Yes, I've ever doubted during the process, but these were very few moments of challenge, moments when you wonder whether you're on the right path, whether you couldn't do better out there, moments when you met your former classmates appearing to be happier, and you must continue with the long years of formation. Yes, there were moments of doubt, of wonder, but with the help of your own classmates, the help of your spiritual director, and of course the faith formation at the foundation of everything, we would be able to go on.
And your parents and your siblings were at your ordination?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, it must have been a moment of great joy.
Immense joy.
Was it a village event, or how did that happen?
Yes, we, not in the strict sense of a village, but
the community.
The community, yes. They all came, a number of people came together right from the moment they had announcements that I would be ordained finally. They did make great contributions, and it's here that I would also contemplate about my past life. Who was I? How did this journey begin? And remembering the number of people, young people that I had along the way. How many of us were in the class when I began? 56 students, and look here, at the end, we were 12 to be ordained. Kind of an apostolic number.
Apostolic number.
Yes.
Where were you first posted?
I was first posted in a rural parish that is called Our Lady of Counsel, Nadangira. But it was a beautiful place in the sense that the parish environment, life was already thriving. There was a secondary school, so many primary schools. The priest with whom I had my first experience was also very organized. He helped me understand that living in a parish is not just a question of physical existence, but he would share out our duties, moments of outreach, and encourage me as a young priest to follow that which I felt, especially ministries reaching out to the sick people, to listen to the stories of the suffering students in the schools around, their parents, and sometimes sharing my own, because in some sort I think I was extremely lucky to have made it to the end. Sometimes it was difficult to pay the school dues.
In this context of a rural parish, you must have encountered also a lot of poverty. I suppose your history, your own personal history, would have prepared you for this. But how do you make the balance between prayer and charitable action?
Yes. Have you ever asked the Lord why He has let something happen? I used to have a lot of this, faced with challenges, especially when I could tell that it was not entirely the problem of a young person to be like this, to stay home just because they cannot afford the school dues, and those who come to school to come without feet on their shoes on their feet. Many had lost their parents and were living in very unstable families, telling me tales of terrible suffering, abuses, in constant fear. I've seen students who would be scared to go home because they felt safer in the school environment. This was touching, and it got me into their life to understand in reality what it means. And the more I thought I could work to help them, to connect them to better people, I later found out, probably approaching this like a social worker anywhere, I was getting dry. Eventually, I came back to my senses and wondered, did Jesus himself solve every little problem during his lifetime? No. But what made him go on? There were the moments of prayer, his constant relationship with the Father, the Holy Spirit. So I would go to the tabernacle sometimes alone, cry for these children alone, present them to the Lord alone in prayer. And things happened bit by bit. I was in this parish for just about a year, but they did not want me to leave when a decision was eventually made that I should be the diocesan chaplain for Kampala, because maybe they had heard the stories of the little transformation happening somewhere in a far village.
You then also worked with youth in Kampala, but what the stories, the situations were different again. Yeah. What was that distinction? You moved now to very much an urban environment. What did you confront there?
Considering Kampala as the capital of Uganda, also becomes the attraction for many young people looking for an opportunity in life, those who think they can find a better school, a job, a university. They all come to Kampala. And just around this time, the war between Joseph Kony in the northern part of Uganda was about to be over, so many were coming down the city. Many were homeless. I came face to face with so many street children. I came face to face with children who are living in juvenile prisons, so to say, and they will tell you stories. Well, I should say in some sense the wardens were kind to let me, for example, go in with a little chocolate or sweet to lighten them up and tell them something that encourages them. But for the most part, life was pretty fast, very challenging, with so many uncertainties, with so many young people. Uganda has a huge population of young people. And for me, I then realized that this would be too heavy on one man's shoulders. Now, with the experience of the Lord and how He works out in ways that you never contemplate at times, I went back to Him. He's my master. He called me to the priesthood. And then the idea of making partnerships with some kind Christians, for example, but also I started a young Catholic professionals association to help in a way using their professionalism to
reach
uplift
out the young people.
Yes, for example, young doctors to offer free services when they can, and teachers like that. So bit by bit it helped. I want to think so, but again, you never get to do everything. To tell you the truth, it's very gratifying even to change the life of just one young person.
Was there one story that touched you in particular?
Quite many, but yes, I could tell about one.
One.
Just one. A young man. He was about 18 years, and he had struggled through life to make it up to the fourth level of secondary education. Doing all kind of odd things, work, to ensure that he can keep going. And one time we met in one of these huge meetings with young people. So he approaches me timidly, but someone had whispered to him, if you go to Father, who knows? And then I make an appointment with him, and he gives me a long story of what he has grown up to understand family to be. He had lost both parents. He had no real home to stay. He was never certain of what he would eat. And there he was asking me to be a servant to me. I didn't have a salary myself that I could even share with him. And I looked at him and wondered what kept him going all this while. He's a young man with a lot of courage, but his story was quite touching. And then he kept telling me the slums that he has been to, and the times he has been arrested. And at one time, actually, he was arrested again. But he told the police that I am, when they asked, who is your next of kin? I had to learn how to write police statements, help these young people out when in trouble, but also to explain to them about the reality of our communities and societies. And bit by bit, I helped him find a kind of stable job in a nearby factory. He was extremely happy, excited. He became one of the young people I could rely on in matters of responsibility. If you want something prepared, you have a place that needs preparation before an event, he would come around. He would call all his friends. And like this, I saw him kind of transforming other people from a little touch of a priest like this. It was amazing. It was really amazing.
You see the hand of the Lord.
The hand of the Lord, yes. Today he is doing well.
Yes.
I want to say. Sometimes he writes to me on Facebook, openly thanking me, and other friends make fun of me, like, well, this young man wants to canonize you too early. But that's one of the stories among many.
Father, I want to touch briefly a little bit on the situation, the story in Uganda itself. Kampala, of course, is the center of the region where the Ugandan martyrs, 45 Christian martyrs were killed, 23 Anglicans and 22 Catholics, who were burnt alive in the 1880s on the orders of King Mwanga II of Buganda Kingdom, who was alarmed about the growing Christian faith. And my question to you is, how has this martyrdom, this very tragic and strong martyrdom in the history of Uganda, marked the faith of Ugandan Catholicism today?
We read from theology about St. Athanasius, who once said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of Christianity. Obviously, the king at that time was alarmed. Why? Because these young lads were not exactly in line of duty as he did expect originally. They spent a lot more time on Christian duties and spread this, and of course there were also rumors that this was a path to overtake him. But that aside, the brutality with which they were killed and the fact that they were given a chance to choose not to go ahead, to denounce their faith, and they continued, has continued to touch so many people. The Archdiocese of Kampala has a museum in which one can find a little booklet used for catechism for these matters. It's written in half French because the missionary was from France, Père Lodel Mapera, a little bit of French, a little bit of Swahili, a little bit of Luganda, the language in the central region. And you wonder, sometimes we used to wonder if in a language so broken, this catechism was so touching for these young people, the story of Christ. How come today we speak in a language everybody understands, and sometimes we don't see the immediate effect? But anyhow, if you should judge faith by numbers, it tells the story. There isn't a single event in the history of Namgongo at the shrines where one year, the preceding year, shows lesser numbers of Christians who come. It's always growing and growing and growing. And like this, it marks a character for us as a country, but also a greater part of Africa, because we get so many tourists from neighboring countries.
Pope Francis visited recently Uganda. What was his expression upon visiting this shrine of the Ugandan martyrs?
Well, it was quite a joy to receive him, and once again, in a word, I could say it marked the real presence of the Church as one, the universality of the Church united. To see a Pope come all the way down to Africa to pray with the people, to share a word with the people, to comfort them in their tribulations, that was really awesome. He actually told at various audiences, one, when he met with young people, but two, also at the Mass at Namgongo. He encouraged people to look at the martyrs as heroes in our faith, to tread their paths in what they did, to build the country and the faith upon the very foundation that our martyrs had already laid for us. And that was very touching. To this day, people speak about him with all his cheer.
I think there was something like 3.2 million who came to the final Mass. So
exactly.
It was a great event in Uganda.
It was really a great event.
Yeah.
And it has changed also the face of the very constructions, for example, because having recognized that after so many years, the numbers keep growing. The Archbishop of Kampala has decided to begin reconstructing and ensuring that places of convenience and people can celebrate this Mass in a much more peaceful environment.
Dignified manner.
Yes,
Yes.
Looking at the photos today, I see Namgongo completely transformed from the old Namgongo I used to know. Mm-hmm.
Father, you're here for some years to do your doctorate in Rome, and then you're going back to Uganda to serve. What you bring back to Uganda, to the people that you want to share with them when you return?
Rome has many things to offer as the center of our faith. And one, to tell them the truth that the church is real. It's not an abstract reality. Two, the wealth of the diversity that exists in our church. Three, I would be very happy, obviously, to share the knowledge that I will have acquired at the end of my studies with the Christians, the diocese, and wherever the bishop will choose to send me. I'm sure that in so many ways I will be able to help. Why? Because with the studies here in Rome, you come to contemplate and to understand a little more concretely how the church works, what are its mysteries, and how it has traversed over the years to be what it is today. And it really reconfirms you in your faith and with a new confidence that we can see a better tomorrow.
Father Simon, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
You're welcome, Mark.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program. And if you'd like to know more about the story of Catholics in Uganda, or perhaps how you might be able to help through prayers or concrete action, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.